What if you took years of Sims player feedback, feature requests, complaints and wishlist and turned them into a game? Because honestly, that's exactly what Paralives feels like. For over a decade, Sims players have been asking for the same things. An open world, height sliders, more flexible building tools, deeper customization, better social system, and overall more freedom. And somehow a small indie team looked at that list and decided to build an entire life simulation game around it. What started as a small independent project and eventually grew into one of the most anticipated life simulation games ever made. For years, players followed every development update, every showcase, and every new feature reveal. It was being presented as the game that would finally deliver many of the features that Sim fans had been asking for years. So when the game finally launched in early access, people were eager to see if it could actually live up to all that hype. And after spending quite a bit of time with it, I think the answer is complicated. The first place where Paralives immediately stands out is character creation. You can tweak pretty much every part of the face, adjust body proportions in detail, and even place tattoos exactly where you want them. Now, the clothing selection isn't huge at the moment, but I think what's here covers the basic pretty well. Most clothing items can be customized using a full color wheel. You can also layer clothing pieces on top of each other, which opens up even more outfit combinations. But let's talk about the feature everyone always asks about: height. Yes, you can finally make character taller or shorter, and what's really impressive is that the game doesn't just stretch the model. Changing height affects the entire body proportionally, so character actually look natural. It sounds like a small thing, but once you start creating household with people of different height, it adds a surprising amount of variety. I also really like what they did with personality. Instead of only choosing traits, you are building a character through multiple systems. One thing that stood out to me is how the game handled things like sleeping and cleaning habits and dietary preferences. In The Sims 4, being vegetarian, neat or messy takes up one of your personality trait slots, even though those things aren't really personality traits. Paralives separated them into their own category, and honestly, that just makes more sense to me. I also like that the game lets you create people who aren't good at everything. That said, the system isn't perfect. Right now, there aren't any genuinely negative traits available, so it's actually impossible to create a truly negative character. As a result, most characters end up feeling fairly positive and well-adjusted. And then there is the height system. As cool as it is, it also creates some problems. Because characters can have very different proportions, some animations don't always line up perfectly. Every now and then you will see a character interacted with an object in a slightly awkward way, or an animation that clearly wasn't designed with every possible body type in mind. If character creation was built around freedom, then the building system takes the idea even further. And honestly, this might be my favorite feature in the entire game. The amount of control you have is genuinely impressive. You can resize windows, adjust doors, customize furniture, and shape your house in ways that feel incredibly flexible. Building in Paralives feels fun, at least until you decide to place a staircase or try building on one of the hill lots. At the moment the game doesn't have a dedicated foundation system. I ended up recreating foundations using room and other building tools instead. Visually the results can look great, but technically the game still treats those foundations as rooms, and that can sometimes lead to unexpected behavior. When you have a fire, it can spread underneath your house, making it impossible to extinguish. Another feature that generated a lot of excitement before launch was the open world, and on paper Paralives does have one. You can walk through the neighborhood, explore different parts of the town, and move around without constantly returning to a world map. At first it feels like exactly the kind of a feature life simulation fans have been asking for. The world feels larger, more connected, and more immersive. But after spending more time with the game, I started feeling like the open world is more of an illusion than a fully realized system. While you can move around the town itself, every lot still needs to load when you enter it. And those loading screens aren't always quick. In my experience, some of them can take around 20 seconds or even longer depending on what's being loaded. What's interesting is that once a lot is loaded, it stays active until another lot slot is opened. So if you are lucky enough to live next to a diner or another busy community lot, be prepared for a constant stream of sounds coming from that lot. Because it stays active, you will hear everything that's happening there, including occasionally the sound of someone using the bathroom. It's a pretty strange experience when you are sitting in your own apartment and suddenly hearing random strangers peeing in somewhere next door. Another aspect I want to talk about is the graphics, because I think the visual style is going to be one of the most divisive parts of Paralives. The game has a very stylized and cartoon-like look, and by choosing the direction, the developers basically guaranteed that some people would love it while others wouldn't. I'll be honest, when I first saw the early trailers and screenshots years ago, I was a little disappointed. I'm generally a fan of more realistic visuals, so the art style didn't immediately click with me. But after spending time with the game, I found myself getting used to it surprisingly quickly. In the final, the world feels cozy, the characters are expressive. But more importantly, I think this was a smart decision from a strategic perspective. Right now, there aren't many serious competitors in the life simulation genre, but the ones that do exist are already occupying very different spaces. For example, The Sims has its own established visual identity, Enjoy is pushing heavily towards proto-realism, and Paralives was always going to need its own place somewhere between these two extremes. Whether you love the art style or hate it, it's recognizable. You can usually tell you're looking at Paralives within a few seconds, and in a genre where games are constantly being compared to one another, that's actually a pretty important achievement. Up until this point, most of the game's biggest promises have been fulfilled. Better customization, check. Better building, check. Larger worlds, check. But now there is the most important question: is the actual life simulation fun? One of the biggest differences you will notice when playing Paralives is how social interactions work. Instead of selecting actions from long menus, the game uses a card-based interaction system. Depending on the situation, your character's personality, their relationship with another characters, their mood and various other factors, different interaction cards become available. And honestly, I think it's a really interesting idea. It feels like the developers were trying to create a system where personality actually matters. The problem is that the concept is currently stronger than the content supporting it. After spending enough time with the game, you start noticing that the same cards appearing over and over again, the same conversation, the same interaction chain, the same outcomes. But the bigger issue for me wasn't even the repetition, it was the pacing. Before new interaction cards become available, characters need to complete the current interaction, which is represented by progress bar that slowly fills up while they are talking. In theory that sounds fine, but in practice it often feels much slower than it should. Part of the problem is that there simply aren't enough animations to support these conversations. Characters frequently repeat the same gestures, the same reactions, or sometimes just stand there while the interaction progresses in the background. What's frustrating is that I can actually see the potential here. The foundation is interesting, the idea makes sense, and unfortunately, when a life simulation game relies so heavily on social interactions, the lack of variety becomes difficult to ignore. Another thing that surprised me was the lack of multitasking. And honestly, this is one of the biggest weaknesses of the current simulation. Characters can't really perform multiple actions at the same time, even simple everyday ones. One of the few examples that occasionally works is watching TV while sitting down, but beyond that there isn't much. And after coming from The Sims 4, where characters can scroll through their phones while sitting on the toilet, it feels surprisingly restrictive. And yes, I know, comparing Paralives to The Sims isn't completely fair. The Sims is backed by a much bigger team and has had decades to evolve, but at the same time, even The Sims 1 let characters sit down and read a book over 20 years ago. Now, to be fair, Paralives is still in early access, and I think that's important to keep in mind when talking about many of the issues I have mentioned so far, the developers have already shared a fairly ambitious roadmap that includes features like pets, seasons, new activities, expanded family gameplay, any additional life simulation systems, so there are clearly a lot of more content planned for the future, and honestly that's not what concerns me. The bigger question for me is what happens underneath all of that, because I don't think the game's biggest challenge is the lack of the content. I think its biggest challenge is the simulation itself. Will conversation become more dynamic? Will characters feel more alive? Will multitasking improve? Will everyday life become less repetitive over time? Those are the questions I'm most interested in it. And to be clear, I'm not criticizing Paralives for being in early access. I don't expect a finished game and I don't really care about missing content at this stage. What stands out to me are the larger systems that shape the overall experience, because right now there are moments where the game focuses on unique objects and small details, while some basic everyday activities still feel underdeveloped. A parafall can get scared by a door that suddenly sticks out its tongue at midnight, but they can do something as simple as sit down and read a book comfortably. That said, I still see a huge amount of potential here. I don't think Paralives is going to replace The Sims, and honestly, I don't think it needs to, but I do think it has the potential to become something the genre desperately needs, a generally good alternative. And that's exactly why I'll be watching closely to see where it goes next.